When Andrew Collins burst into the room and saw the maid kneeling over his injured son, his voice thundered before his brain could catch up. "Get away from him!" Evelyn froze, her hands still trembling from cleaning the boy's bloody knee. She looked up, heart pounding, not with guilt, but with heartbreak. Because in that moment, he didn't see what was really happening. And by the time he did, everything had already changed. The morning sun filtered through the towering glass windows of the Collins estate, casting long shadows over polished marble floors. Silence echoed in the house like a presence of its own, a kind of coldness that even sunlight couldn't melt. Evelyn Murphy moved quietly through the halls, barefoot in soft white socks, her uniform neatly pressed. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing, were gentle as she placed a breakfast tray on the side table in Edison's room. She smiled as she knocked lightly and peeked in. "Edison," she called, her voice barely louder than a whisper. No answer. She stepped inside. The room was empty, bed still unmade, blankets tossed aside. She set the tray down and turned, eyes narrowing slightly. Then she heard it, a muffled sound, soft and strained, coming from the ensuite bathroom. She rushed toward it. The door was ajar, and there he was, Edison Collins, crumpled on the cold tile floor, his pajama pants soaked at the knee, blood trickling down his shin. His small face was pale, twisted in pain, but trying not to cry. "Oh my God, Edison!" Evelyn dropped to her knees beside him. "What happened?" "I slipped," he whispered. "Tried to get up, but it hurts." Her heart clenched. No one had heard him. No one had come. She dampened a towel from the sink and began dabbing gently at the wound. "You're okay. I've got you," she said softly, voice shaking as much as her hands. She tried not to let emotion rise in her chest, but seeing him like this, so alone, so fragile, it hit something deep. She could still remember being small, scared, hurt, and having no one to turn to. She didn't even notice the footsteps approaching. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The voice was sharp, piercing, authority and fear laced together. Evelyn jerked her head around. Andrew Collins stood in the doorway, towering, furious, his suit still unbuttoned from a call he'd clearly just stormed out of. His eyes locked onto her kneeling form, then to the red stain on the towel, then back to his son's face. "Step away from him. Now." Evelyn froze. Her fingers were still resting on Edison's calf. The boy looked up, frightened, not of her, but of his father's tone. "Mr. Collins, please. He was hurt. I said get away from him." Andrew's voice cracked, not with anger, but panic. He crossed the room in 3 strides and placed himself between her and the boy. Evelyn slowly rose to her feet, backing away, her heart pounding in her chest. Edison tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, she was helping me." Andrew didn't respond at first. He was still breathing hard, processing the scene. The blood, the maid, his only child. Guilt, confusion and fear warred behind his eyes. Evelyn stood there, lips pressed shut, fighting the sting of tears. Not because he yelled, but because in that moment he didn't see her. Not the care in her hands, not the concern in her eyes. Only the uniform, only the assumption. "I'll go," she whispered, and turned away before he could respond. She walked back down the hallway, each step echoing through a house that had never once felt like home. If you were in Evelyn's shoes, would you have said something, or walked away in silence? Tell us in the comments below. Some moments leave no room for words, but they still speak volumes. The door to Edison's room clicked shut, with a weight heavier than wood and metal. Andrew sat on the edge of his son's bed, hands still shaking from the adrenaline, guilt gnawing at his ribs like a dull blade. Edison watched him quietly, his leg freshly bandaged by a nurse who'd been called moments after Evelyn left. "She didn't hurt me," the boy said. Andrew ran a hand through his thick, slightly graying hair. "I know." "She was helping." "I know, Edison." The boy looked away. "Then why did you yell at her like that?" That question struck deeper than Andrew expected. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Because I saw what I was afraid of. not what was real. Outside the room, Evelyn stood in the hallway, gripping the laundry basket like a shield. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but his voice carried, just enough. And those last words. They pierced something. In the staff quarters, Evelyn stood at the sink, scrubbing the same plate over and over, her eyes unfocused. Her hands moved from muscle memory, but her mind, her heart, was elsewhere. She had worked for the Collins family for just over a year. Never once had Andrew Collins spoken to her with warmth, not cruelty, just distance, formality, like everyone else in that house. But today had been different. Today he saw her, even if it was through the wrong lens. And she hated how much it stung. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting gold across the mansion's windows, Andrew stepped into the kitchen, a place he rarely entered. Evelyn was there chopping vegetables. The silence between them was loud. He cleared his throat. "I overreacted," he said. She didn't look up. "Yes." He paused, surprised at her bluntness. I saw Edison on the floor and you—" "I get it," she interrupted. "You were scared." He studied her face, calm, composed, but her jaw was tight. "I appreciate what you did for him," he added. "You don't have to say that. But I mean it." Finally, her eyes met his. There was no hatred in them, just exhaustion, the kind of tired you carry in your bones. "I'm not the enemy, Mr. Collins," she said quietly. "I care about Edison. I would never hurt him." He nodded once, slowly. "I know that now. If this story's already pulling at your heart, don't just feel it, support it. Hit that subscribe button. It tells us you want more stories that speak to the soul." That night, Andrew sat in his office, staring at the security footage from earlier that day. The moment she'd entered the bathroom, the way she had dropped to her knees without hesitation, the towel, the hands, the care. It was maternal. It was human. And it had nothing to do with her job description. For the first time in a long while, he felt something shift in him. Not just guilt, but curiosity. Who was Evelyn Murphy, really? The next morning, Evelyn arrived earlier than usual. She slipped through the side entrance like she always did. But something in her steps had changed. Sharper, more careful. She avoided the second floor altogether. Instead of bringing Edison his breakfast personally, she handed the tray to another maid and busied herself downstairs with laundry, even though it wasn't her turn. The silence was easier to manage than the possibility of seeing Andrew again. She didn't hate him. That would have been easier. She just didn't know what to do with the way he had looked at her, like he was seeing her now. And that scared her more than anything. Andrew, meanwhile, sat in his home office with untouched coffee and restless thoughts. He'd already checked on Edison, who was watching cartoons with a slight limp but a bright smile. He had asked if Miss Evelyn was coming today. Andrew had said yes. But she hadn't come upstairs, and somehow that bothered him, more than it should. He opened his emails, scrolled through meetings, investment portfolios, market updates, but all his mind kept circling back to her, to the way she had said, "I'm not the enemy." She had been right, and yet the distance between them felt wider now than before. In the kitchen, the cook asked Evelyn, "Aren't you going to check on Edison? He's been asking for you." Evelyn hesitated. "Maybe later." She didn't want to intrude, not after yesterday, not after that look on Andrew's face. She had learned long ago that when people like him looked at people like her with confusion, it usually didn't end well. So she pulled back. Walls were safer than open doors. That evening, Edison wandered into the laundry room, dragging a toy behind him. "Miss Evelyn." She turned, surprised. "Edison, how did you get down here?" "Dad was on the phone. I snuck past." He grinned, proud. He sat on the floor beside her while she folded sheets. "I missed you today," he said, not looking at her. "You always sing when you clean." She smiled gently. "I didn't think you'd notice." "I notice everything," he said, with the blunt wisdom only children have. "And I don't like when grown-ups act weird," She laughed despite herself. Well, grown-ups are weird sometimes. Upstairs, Andrew was calling for his son when he realized the boy was gone. He moved through the house, growing more concerned until he heard voices from the laundry room. As he approached, he heard it, Evelyn's soft voice telling Edison about a story from when she was a child. Laughter. Connection. He paused at the doorway, just out of view. His hands stayed at his sides. He wanted to step in, but something in him said, "Don't ruin it." At this point, what should Andrew do when protect his pride or follow his heart? Comment your take. Sometimes the hardest thing is simply walking through the open door. 2 days later, the household was tense again, this time because of Edison's fever. It wasn't dangerously high, but it was enough to worry everyone. He lay curled on the couch in the main living room, a cold compress on his forehead and flushed cheeks. The doctor had come and gone. "Just rest and fluids," he'd said. "He'll be fine." But Andrew stayed rooted beside his son's side, every now and then brushing the boy's damp hair back, unsure what to do with himself. Then the butler approached him. "Sir, Evelyn asked to come check on Edison." Andrew hesitated. "She doesn't have to." She insisted. Moments later, Evelyn stepped in quietly, holding a fresh compress and a cup of chamomile tea. Her gaze moved straight to Edison, avoiding Andrew entirely. "How's he doing?" she asked softly. Andrew stood. "Sleeping. On and off." Evelyn nodded, walked over, and knelt beside the couch. She touched Edison's forehead gently, then swapped the cloth with practiced care. Andrew watched her, arms crossed, but not with suspicion this time. There was something in her presence, calm, steady, that made the room feel less tight. "I made him tea," she said. "He doesn't drink tea." "He'll drink this," she replied with a small smile. He didn't argue. For the next hour, they both stayed there, tending to Edison, silently taking turns, orbiting each other like awkward planets. Andrew cleared his throat. "You're good with him." Evelyn didn't look at him. "He's a good kid." He shifted. "He doesn't warm up to people easily, never has." She gently lifted Edison's head to let him sip the tea. The boy stirred, blinked, and smiled faintly. "Miss Evelyn." "Shh, drink slowly," she whispered. Andrew knelt on the other side of the couch, mirroring her. Their eyes met over Edison's small form. It was the first time they'd looked at each other directly since that day. Something passed between them. Neither of them said it, but it was there. For the next hour, they both stayed there, tending to Edison, silently taking turns, orbiting each other like awkward planets. Andrew cleared his throat. "You're good with him." Evelyn didn't look at him. "He's a good kid." He shifted. "He doesn't warm up to people easily, never has." She gently lifted Edison's head to let him sip the tea. The boy stirred, blinked, and smiled faintly. "Miss Evelyn." "Shh. Drink slowly," she whispered. Andrew knelt on the other side of the couch, mirroring her. Their eyes met over Edison's small form. It was the first time they'd looked at each other directly since that day. Something passed between them. Neither of them said it, but it was there. After Edison drifted off again, Evelyn stood. "I'll be in the kitchen. Just call if he needs anything." "Wait." She paused. Andrew rose too. "I was wrong that day." She gave a sad little smile. "We've already moved past it." "No, we haven't." A beat. "I judged you," he admitted, "without even trying to understand." "You saw what you were taught to see," she replied gently, "and I've learned not to expect anything else." That hit him harder than he didn't know what to say. So she nodded once, turned and left the room, leaving silence in her wake. If stories like this remind you of what it means to be human, don't just watch, subscribe. It helps us keep telling the stories others are afraid to tell. Edison was recovering faster than expected. By the next morning, he was sitting up in bed, flipping through picture books and asking when he could have ice cream again. Andrew sat nearby, half listening to a conference call with his laptop open, but his attention kept drifting back to his son and to Evelyn, who had come in quietly with a warm blanket and a plate of toast cut into tiny triangles. "She's better than you," Edison told his dad bluntly, pointing at the toast. Andrew smirked. "I'm aware." Evelyn just smiled, shaking her head. Later that afternoon, Evelyn sat with Edison as he napped. Andrew stood at the doorway watching, arms crossed, softer than usual. "I used to think I could protect him from everything," he said quietly. Evelyn looked up, but said nothing. "He was just a baby when his mom passed." Her hands stilled on the blanket. "She was sick," he continued. "Breast cancer, caught late, aggressive. We had 7 months. Evelyn blinked slowly, heart sinking. "I promised her I'd keep him safe. And somehow, in trying to do that, I've made this house feel more like a museum than a home." Evelyn looked at Edison. The small boy curled on the bed, oblivious to the ghosts swirling around him. "He's still warm," she said softly, "because someone kept that part of him alive." Andrew's eyes met hers. There was pain in his, but gratitude too. That night, Evelyn sat outside in the small staff garden behind the mansion, a hidden slice of peace in a world that often felt too heavy. She held a small picture in her hand, worn, faded. A young woman, herself, holding a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. Her daughter. Gone now. Lost to a sickness she couldn't afford to fight. No one in the Collins house knew. No one had asked. But seeing Edison so small, so vulnerable, had cracked something open in her, not broken, but revealed. The next morning, Andrew found Evelyn in the hallway, folding linens. "I was going through some old things in Edison's room," he said. "I found this." He held out a small cloth rabbit, one of Edison's first toys. "I thought we'd lost it." Evelyn smiled gently. "He keeps it under his pillow. I fix it when it tears." Andrew paused. "You know him better than I do." She didn't answer that. She didn't have to, because it was true. It started with the pancakes. Andrew Collins, billionaire investor, known for freezing boardrooms with a single glance, stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes. Badly. "Are they supposed to look like that?" Edison asked, peering over the counter. "They're rustic," Andrew replied. "They're burnt," Evelyn corrected gently, stepping in to rescue the pan. She flipped one effortlessly. "You need more butter." Andrew watched, almost amused. "Noted." Edison clapped. "Miss Evelyn wins breakfast." Andrew smirked. "I'm going to pretend I don't feel deeply insulted." They sat at the long kitchen island, the three of them, eating pancakes that actually turned out pretty good once Evelyn took over. It was simple, domestic, unfamiliar, but safe. Andrew watched Evelyn talk to Edison about school, cartoons, the things he loved. He noticed the ease in her body, the way she laughed without checking herself, the way Edison glowed around her. Then she asked a question that caught him off guard. "What did you love when you were his age?" Andrew paused, fork in hand. "Books. I used to hide in the attic at my grandparents' place and read for hours." "What kind of books?" He shrugged. "Adventure. Things that made the world feel bigger than it was." She smiled. "You don't seem like a dreamer." "I wasn't allowed to be." That silenced the table for a moment. Then Evelyn said, "Maybe it's not too late to be one now." He looked at her, and for a second, something passed between them. Later, as Edison napped on the couch with that old cloth rabbit, Evelyn and Andrew sat quietly across from each other. No arguing, no walls, just presence. "You're different than I expected," she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "You expected a villain." "I expected someone colder," he chuckled. "Maybe I was." "You still can be," she teased. He smiled. "So can you." They sat with that, playful tension, soft edges. It didn't feel like a boundary anymore. It felt like a door slowly opening. Before Evelyn stood to leave, Edison stirred and mumbled, "Are we a family now?" Neither adult answered. Not with words, but neither of them walked away. If this moment made you smile, if you felt even a flicker of warmth, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep sharing stories that heal. It started with a phone call. Andrew had stepped away to take it. A business associate, someone from a charity board, the usual half-listening conversation. But Evelyn was in the hallway just outside the study, waiting to ask him about Edison's school pickup. She didn't mean to overhear, but one word froze her in place. No, she's just the help. Silence. Then, no, not like that. She's good with Edison. But let's not be ridiculous. It's not that kind of situation. Evelyn turned around and walked away, carefully, quietly, like someone who had just remembered where she stood. Andrew didn't know she'd heard, but he knew something had changed the moment he entered the kitchen and found her packing up Edison's lunch for the next day, her movements clipped, robotic. "Hey," he said softly. She didn't respond. "You okay?" Still silence. He stepped closer. "Evelyn?" She set the lunchbox down, turned, and looked him straight in the eye. "You think I don't know how people like you talk about people like me when we're not in the room?" He froze. "What are you talking about?" "That call," she snapped, voice trembling. "Just the help. Is that what I am to you, after everything? A warm body for your kid to cling to, while you mourn your wife in silence and hide from your feelings? That's not fair." "No, it's true," she cut in, "and you know it. I've been nothing but present, caring, and I never expected anything from you, not affection, not attention, not even a thank you." He shook his head. "Evelyn, that wasn't—" "I know what it was." She stepped back, her breath shallow. "I let my guard down. I should never have done that." Andrew took a step forward. "You mean a lot more than you think you do." She gave a dry laugh. "To who? To your son or to you when no one's watching?" That hit him hard, and instead of softening, he snapped, "Don't twist this. Don't act like you haven't been enjoying this attention too." Evelyn's face fell, not from anger, but from heartbreak. "You really don't get it," she whispered. And then she walked out of the room, out of the house, and out of his world. Edison asked about her that night. Andrew told him she needed time off. He didn't explain why, because he couldn't. That night Andrew stood in the garden behind the house, where Evelyn once sat, staring at the stars she used to watch alone. He thought he had built a fortress to protect Edison. He didn't realize he was the one keeping the warmth out. The house felt different without Evelyn. Colder, quieter. Edison noticed it first. He didn't say much, but every few hours he would ask when she was coming back, not with panic, just confusion, as if her absence didn't make sense in a world where she had become a constant. Andrew didn't have an answer. He couldn't say she left because I broke the only trust she gave me. For the first time in a long time, Andrew skipped his morning meetings. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop closed and his phone turned over. His assistant texted twice. He didn't reply. Instead, he stared at the counter where Evelyn once taught him how to properly flip a pancake. It felt like someone had hit pause on everything, except the guilt. That evening, he found Edison in the garden, Evelyn's garden, watering the plants with a cup of juice. "What are you doing out here, bud?" Edison looked up. "I'm taking care of her flowers." Andrew knelt beside him. "Why?" "Because no one else is." Andrew's throat tightened. Edison looked at him then, serious. "I think you made her sad." Andrew looked down at the cup. "I think I did too." That night, he finally wrote the message. It took an hour. He started 3 different drafts, but the one he sent was the one that felt like the truth. "I was wrong. You were never just anything. You were the light in a house that forgot how to be warm. I judged you through a lens I didn't know I was still carrying. But I see it now, I see you, and I'm sorry. Not just for what I said, but for what I didn't have the courage to feel. Until you were gone." He stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. No guarantee she'd reply. No guarantee she'd even read it. But it was the first honest thing he'd said in a long time. Miles across the city, Evelyn sat alone in her small apartment, a single lamp on, the picture of her daughter still by her bedside. When her phone buzzed, she didn't reach for it at first. She was afraid, afraid it would hurt to read, afraid it would hurt more not to. But then she opened it, and she read every word. Twice. And for the first time since she left, she cried. It was Sunday morning, the same kind of quiet, golden morning where all of this had started. The Collins estate looked the same, polished marble, stillness in the halls, but the energy had shifted. Andrew stood at the bottom of the staircase, tying Edison's shoelaces. The boy was bouncing with energy. "She's not coming," Edison said, though he wasn't upset, just factual. "She might," Andrew replied. "You said she got your message." "She did." "Then what's taking her so long?" Andrew smiled. "Sometimes, grown-ups need a little more time to be brave." Then the front door opened. Soft steps. A familiar figure appeared, sunlight at her back, bag over her shoulder, heart in her throat. Evelyn Murphy had come back. Edison gasped and ran toward her. She dropped her bag just in time to catch him in a hug that nearly knocked her over. "I watered your plants," he said. "I saw," she whispered. "You did such a good job." When she looked up, Andrew was still at the bottom of the staircase, frozen. Their eyes met. He stepped forward slowly, not with certainty, but with reverence. "You came back," he said. "I wasn't going to. I wouldn't have blamed you." Silence. Then, quietly, "But I read your message and you saw me, really saw me." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to unsee you." She exhaled shakily. "That day," she said, "when you walked in and saw me with Edison, you told me to get away from him." Andrew winced. "I remember." Evelyn took a slow step forward. "And now?" He looked at her, not with pride, not with fear, but something deeper. "I want you close," he said, "to him and to me." Tears welled up in her eyes. Edison tugged at both their hands. "Can we have pancakes again?" Evelyn laughed through her tears. "Only if your dad lets me take over the pan this time." They moved toward the kitchen, together, just like before. Only now there were no walls between them, no assumptions, no roles, just a boy, a father, and the woman who helped them both learn how to feel again. This time, Andrew didn't walk in yelling. This time he opened the door and let her in. Do you believe true love, the kind that heals, can grow from the most unexpected places? Tell us in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't just leave. Subscribe. Let's keep feeling together.